Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled to have you joining us here today. We've had very strong interest in today's webinar, and we are excited to be welcoming folks from across the country for today's conversation about mentoring. While we give everyone a chance and a minute or two to log in, we offer you the opportunity to drop your name in the chat so you know who all is on today's webinar. If you could include your role, organization, where you're from, and if you're inspired, what your interest or connection is to mentoring, that would be great. Again, so folks know who is on today's webinar. And with that, I'll give everyone a minute or two to get oriented and settled, and again, just drop their name in the chat. Okay, well, I can see we have a good number of folks now joined us in today's session, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Emily Sherrick. I'm the Associate Vice President for Bank Street's Education Center. And today we have the pleasure of being joined by several members of Bank Street's graduate school, a former Bank Street graduate student and resident, and a mentor teacher from one of our schools in our partner schools. They're each going to share with us their experience with mentorship in the context of Bank Street's residency model. And I want to invite folks to go ahead and use the Q&A feature that's at the bottom of the panel on the Zoom box here to ask any questions that you might have as we go. And to the extent that we're able, we will answer those questions sort of on the spot and then save a few minutes at the end of our hour together today to address any remaining questions. Before we jump in, I wanted to share a little bit of background for those of you who are new or may not know much about Bank Street. We have been around for 100 years, a little over 100 years, and we are focused on how children learn, what teachers need to help children succeed, and how learners of every age can reach their full potential. In addition to our Graduate School of Education, which prepares educators, we have a commitment to serving the broader community through our Education Center, which connects Bank Street's expertise in serving children and educators to also impact policy and practice across the country. And across all of our divisions is a deep commitment to reflective practice and centering what we know about human development in our approach. We share a goal of ensuring that educators across the country, including our early childhood educators and providers, have access to rich job-embedded support that includes structures like coaching and mentoring. Our Learning Starts at Birth initiative is housed in our Education Center and is focused and committed to creating the conditions necessary for stronger investment in the early childhood workforce. This includes programs such as a policy fellowship for systems leaders, coaching programs for in-service educators, and also more recent efforts to support new and developing apprenticeship programs that credential the early childhood workforce. We also publish a range of tools and resources to support the field in that work. For the piece we recently released and that serves as the focus of our agenda for today, we interviewed our colleagues in the graduate school to gain a more detailed understanding of their approach to mentorship in residency programs. Our initiative is interested in learning from this experience and how it can be applied to early educator credential programs. These insights are obviously also universally valuable to educator programs across all age bands and systems. What we're focused on across is how adults learn and the structures for bridging theory to practice in professional learning. So without further ado, I'm excited to introduce you to our 5 panelists. I will begin with Valentine Burr. Val, if you could wave your hand so folks know who you are. Val joined the faculty of Bank Street in 2000. She's the chair of our Department of Teaching and Learning. And since she joined Bank Street, she's also served as an instructor and advisor in the childhood and middle school special education programs, and also served as program director and department chair. And she is committed to supporting the growth of educators as reflective, collaborative, and critical practitioners. And importantly for our conversation today, she oversees our residency programs. Thank you, Val, for being here. Next is Jessica Wontrowski, who leads our D13 residency program and is the director of general and special education programs. Jessica's teaching career began as a special educator in an integrated co-taught classroom. In 2015, she became an adjunct instructor at Bank Street, and in 2017, she joined the faculty as a program director and full-time course instructor. She runs our D13 residency program for childhood special and general ed, which is a 2-year residency cohort program leading to dual certification and a Master of Science in Education. Next up is Christian Salazara, who's the director of our TESOL program and the bilingual dual language program. Christian has been a part of Bank Street's college faculty since 2003. He teaches curriculum development and sheltered instruction in dual language, bilingual classrooms, native language literacy for Spanish-speaking children, and advises students in dual language, bilingual, and special education settings. He's also currently pursuing his PhD in urban education, and Christian runs Bank Street's master's program in TESOL, designed for prospective teachers interested in working with students learning English as a new language. Next up is Tammy Washam, mentor teacher in District 13. Welcome, Tammy. Tammy has over 20 years of teaching experience and is serving as a mentor teacher in a co-taught classroom as part of our D13 residency partnership. She began her teaching career in Brooklyn, where she taught various grades at the elementary level for about 15 years, and then moved out west to Colorado, where she taught in rural settings for about 5 years and is now back in Brooklyn, where she is teaching first grade. And finally, we have Mickey Tamaro, who is a former resident teacher in our TESOL program. She's in her second year as an ENL teacher at PS 191, the Riverside School for Makers and Artists. What a fabulous name for a school. She graduated from the TESOL residency program at Bank Street in May of 2022. Thank you everyone so much for being here today. So Val, I want to begin with you. If you could take us back in time a little bit and talk about why Bank Street was motivated to launch residency programs. And as you do that, can you also help us to define what a residency program is, what that means, and how it's different and also the same as our other graduate school programs?
Thanks for that question, Emily. And hello, everyone. It's really lovely to have everyone joining us this evening. We were thrilled to launch residency programs a couple of years ago. These are our 2 inaugural residency programs here, but we are hoping to expand our residency offerings at the college. And I would say there are a number of reasons we were excited to launch residency programs. One being just the power of context-embedded teacher preparation. So residency allows you to really think about preparing a group of teachers for a very particular context in partnership with that context. Residency programs also create a pathway and create access for teacher educators in the way that traditional pathways don't always do, through supporting the residency year through a stipend. So it's been really exciting to see these programs, to launch these programs, and to see these programs grow and the learning that we've done from them. To define a residency program and sort of differentiate it from our other programs, I would say there are 3 main things to think about when it comes to residency programs. One is what's the program structure and how is that different from other programs? What is the element of partnership in a residency program? And then how do you think about curriculum and curriculum integrated with fieldwork in a residency program? So in terms of program structure, typically residency programs have a year of field experience where a graduate student or a college student has a paid internship or a paid residency in a classroom with a school partner or district partner, in which they are not responsible as head teacher, but working very closely. And Tammy, I'm sure will speak to her role in this work, with an experienced head teacher over the course of a full academic year and almost a full-time capacity. So in our programs, our residents are in classrooms 4 to 5 days a week for the full academic year in one school. Sometimes shifting placements so that they get a sense of different teachers and different perspectives and different age bands, but a really embedded experience. So they get to shadow a teacher and have a kind of gradual release over time of taking up the responsibilities of planning and instruction and assessment and working with families and participating in the full life of a school over the course of a year. And that field embedded experience is happening at the same time that graduate students are taking their coursework at Bank Street. So the field and the coursework gets really closely linked. So that's another one of the buckets, which is this idea of integrated curriculum, that the work that the graduate student is doing in the field is deeply connected to their coursework that they're learning. And that's actually a place where I would say that our residency programs aren't so different from our other programs at Bank Street. We always think very deeply about the integration of theory and practice and the way field experiences inform what graduate students are learning in their graduate classes and the way the graduate classes are informing their field experiences. But the particular nature of the partnership of residency programs allows you to think about that at a deeper level. So typically residency programs are done in partnership with a particular district or a cluster of schools. In these two programs, one is done with a district, one is done with a network of schools. And that allows that reciprocal partnership between the district or the network and the higher ed institution to really say, well, what does good preparation look like for this particular district or for this particular group of schools? And how do we institutionally, as the higher ed partner, think about what we might need to adjust on our end in terms of the way we offer curriculum and learning for our graduate students that really truly prepares them deeply for the context that they're entering.
Great, thank you. That was incredibly helpful context. So for today's conversation, we're going to be taking a close look at just one aspect of that residency model, which is mentoring. When educators in training are paired with experienced educators, as Val described, to work alongside and guide them, they learn and deepen their practice. So I'd love to invite a few of our panelists to talk about why that approach and mentorship is so powerful for educators. Christian, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I think that a residency provides, like a lot of what Val already mentioned, it provides an extended amount of time that a resident can be in the classroom. They can become part of the community. They can learn the culture of what it means to be part of that community. And you just get an extended amount of time to experience those relationships with the kids and with the faculty and staff that's there.
I'd love to hear also from Tammy and Mickey about your experiences. Tammy, do you want to chime in? I think you're on mute.
I was on mute. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Being a mentor teacher has been a great experience. It allows students to have another adult in the classroom who can help them with whatever they need in order to grow both academically and socially. I teach a first grade ICT class, so we have a class dynamic with about a 60-40 split between general education and students who have an individualized education plan. There are usually 2 teachers in the room to support the learning. And by having that resident teacher as well, we can better assist our youngest learners with small group instruction or even individualized instruction, which can help the students feel successful in their learning and with the social dynamic of that as well. I also greatly appreciate having a teaching resident's point of view by looking at learning maybe through a different lens. I've been teaching for a long time, so sometimes it's nice to have a fresh perspective. Like I said, teaching is very isolated. So if you've been there for a long time, it's sometimes nice to see somebody else's point of view. And just looking at planning or analyzing data, it's helpful just to gain that other perspective. It's also really helpful for me as a teacher to like slow down, explain the process of what I do and why I do it. It allows for a reflection and an analysis of like your compelling why of why you're teaching what you're teaching. I just feel like having a resident teacher in the classroom, it offers a really good, almost a perfect symbiotic relationship. I get help so my students can succeed and grow, and the residents get the supported teaching experience. Like, I'm not going to leave them just out and here you go, you're on your own. No, I'll help and guide them along the way. And that is really, really important. There.
Thank you. Mickey, did you want to add to that?
Yes, definitely. Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me. Yeah, for me, I had such an incredible experience with my mentor. She was a wonderful teacher, but she was also just a really wonderful person. And to spend so much time with someone who was so knowledgeable about the profession and her role, we had so many like invaluable conversations throughout the day. And I learned so much from that, but also just having her literally physically next to me most of the day, we could problem solve in real time, which was so amazing, and I could just ask her a question if it came up and she would be right there with me. And Another thing that I think, Val, you mentioned is how, we learn so many amazing things in our coursework, but to have that practical aspect is so important for a teacher because it's so hard to like envision, like, well, when would I use this, or like, how do I use this tool? And to have a mentor teacher kind of walk you through it was for me like really powerful. And I think just you also spoke about the gradual release of responsibility. That was really helpful. I hear a lot of other teachers talk about like being thrown into the classroom, and I really didn't have that experience. I really felt like I was slowly, you know, slowly like kind of pushed into the classroom, and it was a really great experience for me.
Christian, do you have anything else you wanted to add at this point? Yeah.
Yeah, I think mentorship is a powerful piece for both the mentor and the student, because it's a moment to pause and to reflect and to think about what are the challenges that I'm presented with on a daily basis. What does it take to be prepared to be a teacher, an educator on your own? When you're an experienced teacher, sometimes you forget what the challenges are, or you're so used to them that you don't think about it. And so working with a resident, working with a student, and during that fieldwork experience gives you an opportunity to pause and to just say, wow, there's so much embedded in this task. There's so much to think about on a day-to-day basis, even just a morning routine in terms of managing the situation. What does that mean? And so that also gives the mentor the opportunity to really think through as to why am I doing these things, and how did it come? How did my practices develop over time? Why are these important for me? And for the resident, just providing them, mentors are incredibly important. They provide them with the space to grow, and to learn, and and mostly the opportunity to take risks. So that gradual release is releasing control of your own ways of doing, and trusting, and giving some ownership to your residents so that they can take risks. And ultimately, a great mentor is a person that inspires you as a student, as an educator, to inspires you when you're challenged, and especially that keeps supporting you, when you think you failed. And that's a feeling that you often get as a student. You're like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. But just to kind of give you that assurance that, this is a great risk that you took, and we can build on that.
Thank you. I can imagine a lot of folks in the audience are thinking, we have student teaching in our programs. What's different about this from a typical student teaching experience? Jess, we haven't heard from you yet. Do you want to kick us off for this one?
Yeah, I would love to. Hi to everybody that's watching. I'm glad to be here with you all, and I'm going to try and be really specific and give you as many differences as I can think up. There's a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences. And I guess I first want to say so much really depends on how universities and colleges kind of define student teaching and what programming looks like. So I'm going to obviously speak from Bank Street's perspective and try and be clear about the way that we think about student teaching and residency work. So I will say that I graduated from Bank Street's programs as a student teacher. So I have that direct experience. I was a student teacher 3 days a week. It was an unpaid work. I loved both of my placements. I had 2 of them. What I always felt like I was missing was that connection from, let's say I was there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, from Wednesday to the following Monday. So many things happened on that Thursday and Friday that sometimes I came in on Monday and was like, this feels like a whole new classroom or new kids. I felt like I missed out on that read aloud that was done on Thursday that then we were talking about on Monday as a new teacher. It was really hard for me to connect to that. So it always felt like there were gaps. I think I had strong relationships with the folks who mentored me in that student teaching capacity. But I think the residency work is much stronger in terms of the relationship. So a couple of things there: numbers of days per week, that's a difference in my mind. And then the relationships that the residents have with their mentor teachers. I've heard Tammy a number of times talk about her teacher resident as her co-teacher. And that happened very early in September in conversation. Yeah, me and my co-teacher were talking and we're like, wait a second, your co-teacher or your resident? My resident, which is my co-teacher. It was like right away I could feel her care of this person. And so that feels really deep and really meaningful. And I know there's a whole lot of trust embedded in that too. And then we'll also just say with a resident in a school from Monday to Friday, not only are the relationships with the people in that classroom, including the students and other adults, strong, but also relationships with grade teams and with admin at the school. And in our program, the residency is a cohort of students that travel together through courses and also will share each other's classrooms throughout the year. So that relationship is another layer here to just all the relationships in general that are being built. In our program, the residency has a stipend connected to it. So as I said in my student teaching, it was unpaid work. In the residency model that we currently have, folks are paid for the time that they're in classrooms. I will also say, as the program director for this program, I spend a lot of time with people in Tammy's district, with the superintendent and with the person who's responsible for resident programming. That allows me to understand the district in a more intimate way than some of our other partners that I send student teachers to. I have good partnerships with them as well, but I don't know the day in and day out work because I don't have those direct relationships. So it really feels like the the district and the university partnership is quite strong, and we're co-creating this residency program together. And so that means when someone comes to speak to the entire district, I get to know about that, and then we can include that person's readings, or we can include a reading in one of our courses that highlights that person. So residents are having this really kind of circular experience. And then the last thing that I'll say is we hope that the residency leads to full-time jobs in the district the year after the residency takes place. So the person that Tammy is mentoring might become her colleague next year. And so everything from understanding the internal workings of the district to supporting that Department of Ed job application, Tammy's a part of all of that, thinking that this could really be her co-teacher next year. And so that layer of support is quite unique as well.
Thank you so much. Nikki, I want to turn back to you. Given that you have graduated and now are a full-time teacher, can you look back at your experience and offer a story or an example of how your mentor supported your growth that highlights what's so unique and important about this collaborative and hands-on approach to learning? You spoke about the relationship and the day-to-day, but give us a story that kind of really helps paint the picture.
Yeah. So I'll never forget this one story. So me and my mentor teacher and I became very, very close. We clicked, I think it was like definitely a good match, but we really trusted each other. I think someone else mentioned trust, and like that is so important in this relationship. And she was telling me as actually, it was like mid-year, and like Christian was coming in to observe me. And, I was just starting to learn how to lesson plan. And she told me this one story about how she went back when she was applying for jobs, she had made a lesson plan, and she had asked like 10 different teachers, 10 different educators to look over her lesson plan and give her feedback. And she said it was the worst thing that she did, because eventually after like 10 people looked at it, she got so much feedback that wasn't her own. Like, as educators, I think we all have something special, and it's impossible for other teachers to know what is special about you unless you really work closely with them. So she said by the time she, did her demo lesson, she was lost because she had no idea what she was teaching, why she was teaching. And one of the best advice she gave me was, trust your gut. She was like, you're a great educator, trust yourself, and also go to the people who know you the best, And so with that in mind, I knew I could trust her, right? Like she saw me literally every single day except Friday, because we only did 4 days a week. But she really got to know me, and she got to know me as a person. We would take a walk every single day and we talk, not just about teaching. We talked about life. This was like in 2020 when COVID had just hit. So we had all this stuff. And for someone to get to know you like that, like, yeah, I absolutely trusted her and her guidance. And she taught me to really highlight what is special about myself as an educator. And I don't know that I would have gotten that kind of advice if I were just student teaching, like, several times a week and like different, different schools and just bouncing around like that. So I think what's really special about this model is that I got to spend so much time with this amazing teacher who I really looked up to and who I really trusted. And I really felt the same sort of respect on her end too. She respected me as a person, and she understood that I brought my own experiences as a woman, as a mom, as a friend, and I just think it's really important to have that type of connection when you're being mentored, so that I had to trust my mentor in order to take those risks and try to improve as a person and as an educator. So yeah.
Thank you so much. One of the things that really comes through as you're describing that relationship and offering those stories is what a unique role your mentor played as a mentor, not just as an educator and a teacher in the classroom. So I'd love to hear from Christian and Jess, who have been designing not just the residency programs for residents and teachers, but also thinking very intentionally about the support experienced educators need to become mentors. So can you talk about what you've learned about the kind of support that mentors need most? And Christian, we can start with you. And Jess, feel free to pick up when Christian's done.
I think initially mentors want to know what's expected of them. So really sharing expectations. What's our program about? What do we want? How does our program work? And if mentor teachers haven't had residents before, distinguishing how is this relationship different from having a student teacher? How's a resident different? Sometimes mentor teachers would confuse them as teachers that had lots of experience already, and so they're being residents in schools. And I had to be like, no, they're like student teachers. They're learning how to teach. They need you as a mentor. And so just clarifying what a residency is and how we do things, and also just our philosophy of how we want, in our case, how we want to teach language, how we want students that are learning English to learn a new language, but at the same time hold the values that we hold at Bank Street, which is we want to value their entire linguistic repertoire. We want them to be child-centered and so on. And so engaging with that was super, super important. And so we had a colloquium. We were able to raise money to meet with mentors 5 times a year for 1 hour. And so in that colloquium, we had the opportunity to talk about those expectations, to talk about how we approach our instruction, and also even to share with them some of the assignments, some of the things that we do with our residents to think about language differently. How do we use translanguaging pedagogies, for example? Yeah, I think that's it for now.
Yeah, we had the same experience. Tam has been with us for 2 years now. So we're only in our 2nd year in the residency program, and Tammy's been there since the beginning. So I'll talk about some of the things that she and her kind of cohort of mentor teachers experienced, but that expectations piece. I mean, I think Tam, still we're talking about that like 2 years in, like, wait a second, what are you expecting from me in March? But I want to share with you all something that I heard someone say earlier today. She was talking about it in relationship to teachers, but I think it connects to mentors as well. She said something like, new teachers don't want to be good teachers tomorrow. They wanted to be good teachers yesterday. And I loved that, because I think I felt that very deeply as a new teacher. And I think our mentors feel that. They wanted to be good mentors yesterday. Like, I'm already, let's catch up here. The desire to be strong coaches, role models, mentors for the people in their care. I feel that so deeply every time I talk to one of the mentors in the District 13 program. So I guess one thing that I want to call out is that I think it's really important when deciding who's going to be a mentor, that they want to be a mentor. Not everybody is going to want to be a mentor in a program like this, and that's okay. But we really want the people who want to be there, who see it as important work, and work that they can fit into their role during the year. So that feels important. We have in the District 13 program, we also have a colloquia, like Christian was sharing about. We have two days over the summer that we try and meet. It's district representation, Bank Street representation, and then the mentor teachers. And we very much see that as an onboarding experience, talking about the Bank Street program, like Christian said, talking about what it means to be a mentor teacher. The question that we got in the chat, what's the difference between student teaching and this residency model, going over those things together. And it felt really important to us in this program that spaces were genuinely co-facilitated, that it wasn't just Bank Street coming in to say what we think good mentorship is, and it wasn't just the district, but we're together figuring that out and having those conversations. And then once a month for 2 hours, Tammy meets with her mentor teacher colleagues, with myself, with a district representative, and then also the advisor, that person who's going in, watching her teacher resident do their work and giving that feedback. And we do a lot of different things during that time. Tammy, we get to know each other to help the folks who might be teaching at different schools, but within the same district, build that relationship as mentors. We've done things like look at videos of teachers teaching a lesson and saying, how would you give this teacher feedback? Talking about that most important piece of feedback that you might share. So really see it as an opportunity for professional development in that way. And I can share more if there's time later about other things that we've gone over in those colloquia. We see a lot of it as being generative. What are Tammy and her colleagues bringing into the space in terms of things they want to celebrate or some problems of practice, and then how can we talk about that? And just want to shout out District 13. They have found money in their budget to pay the mentor teachers for coming to that colloquia. So they get per session for those 2 hours. They also get per session up to 4 hours during the month for being a mentor. We know the work is much more than 4 hours a month, but I also feel like it's important to recognize some of the work through payment.
Thank you, Jess. Tammy, since we're lucky enough to have a mentor on the panel today, I'd love to turn it over to you to talk about your experience as a mentor and what it's taught you about your practice, your students, yourself, how that experience has been enriching for you as well as for the resident that you're supporting.
Okay. Well, as an ICT teacher, I work with another teacher. There's always 2 teachers in the room. I've always thought that there has to be constant communication of what and how a skill or topic is taught with your teaching partner. I always look, it's almost like a marriage. And I call my co-teacher my work wife. And now I'm blessed to have 2 work wives, and it's lovely. It can be a challenge if there is not complete honesty, transparency. So adding a resident teacher to planning and the teaching dynamic can be a really great experience for all involved. It allows for ideas to build upon one another, and it generates like really enriching tasks and activities that help with students' engagement. So it's constantly active engagement. Nobody's just sitting there zoning out. We don't want any of that. It also helps with student mastery and reinforces the idea that teachers are not only presenters of information, but are also themselves lifelong learners in learning from one another. So I've discovered new ways to deliver content and have experienced deep levels of academic conversations, which has definitely helped me help my students. So to me, it's a very reflective type of situation, being a mentor teacher. It's just taught me to slow down a little bit. Don't go so fast. And being that mentor teacher has also helped me be a really effective ICT teacher. So it's not just the mentor, it's explaining with our co-teachers and just almost like a really nice dance. And it helps everybody involved. Like it's a great program. I'm very blessed to be part of it.
Can I add something, Emily?
Of course.
Yeah, I think to be a mentor, like Mickey and Jess expressed, and I think Tammy's expressing it too, you just have to really care and want to share a level of care with the mentee, because you want the best for your students, and you want the best for the students that your mentee will have in the future. You know, there's a sense of commitment there. I remember when I was a mentor teacher, it was very important for me that my student teacher left the classroom as prepared as possible. for all of the challenges that were going to be presented to them. And I think that level of commitment is rare. So, I think there are a lot of great teachers, but great mentors can be rare because of that. Especially when we're already so challenged by our jobs that we can just be really tired and exhausted. And so that commitment gets you through this. And I think when we're working with mentor teachers, we also have to acknowledge that this is a stressful thing, and that and there are things that trigger you as mentor, and that there are anxieties. So just acknowledging those anxieties and needs as a group, it's almost like a mentor support group, and that, I care about my mentee, but I don't know how to do this, or I'm not sure how to do this, and like Tammy said, it's about communication. And so some of us are really, really great at communicating with adults, and some of us are not so great with communicating with adults. So just sharing, how did you say that? How were you able to engage in that challenging conversation in a supportive way? What are the words you used? I mean, some of these things are things that you need other mentors as a group together to kind of share the best practices as well.
Thank you for adding. That was so helpful. One of the things that strikes me as I hear all of you speak, I heard a couple of folks mention the gradual release of responsibility as sort of a key way to get to what you're describing. Can someone offer a few examples? Like, what does it look like in September, October? What does that gradual release look like? I think I heard Mickey and Jess both mention this. Maybe one of you could sort of kick us off. Get really specific and concrete about what that might look like for folks designing programs for mentors.
I can go first if you'd like. I don't care. Okay, I'll give like a quick example. Like, I had not been in a classroom in I was 34 when I started my residency. I hadn't been in a classroom since I was 18 years old, besides college. So, my first day I was so nervous. I was like, what do I even do? So, I mean, it was like very, I just had to be there and like get comfortable. And she was totally okay with that, and she would like ask me to do things like before the students came in. I was there before school actually started. So I would help with like copying things and like laminating things. And, just like getting comfortable with the classroom was like the first step. And again, those conversations. And then once the students came, and again, it was COVID, it was like very strange for everyone. So I think we were all trying to adjust. But one of the biggest things for me in general is like just developing a relationship with the students, right? Like the teaching will come. Let's try to like get a relationship going with the students. So initially it was that, right? Like getting to know the students, like having like little conversations here and there. And by the end of the school year, I was teaching by myself, like especially if my mentor teacher was out, like she would let me just like have the class all day, so that felt really special. That meant she really trusted me with her students, and it was really fun for me.
Yeah, we got some really important feedback from the mentor teachers in our first year doing the residency. And I think as the director of a program, it feels like a hard balance to strike between being really prescriptive and being so open that folks don't quite know where to move. And so we started out the residency with a bullet pointed list of things that residents might do in their first placement at the beginning, the middle, and the end of that placement. And we heard from our mentors and our residents that didn't feel like enough. They wanted kind of like down to the week, what are the expectations of me? Because remember, they wanted to be good yesterday, right? Like I want to do the thing. So with the mentors, we crafted a doc that went from really week 1 in their first placement to, I'm looking at it now, I don't know how many weeks, but the very last week of the placement. And then we would kind of repeat, but change it for the second placement. So just to give some concrete examples of this gradual release, and in weeks 1, 2, and 3, it's a lot of what Mickey was sharing. How am I building relationships with kids? How am I learning the school culture, classrooms, routines? Things like reviewing IEPs if you're in a classroom that has children with individualized education plans and you're with the special educator, getting to know kids in that one way, running records as part of reading instruction. That's all in the beginning. And then if I scroll and I look at week 6, for example, teacher residents lead 2 transitions, they lead morning meetings, they lead any kind of social emotional work that might be happening that day. They're planning and teaching one small group 3 times a week, and then they're co-planning and co-teaching a content area with their mentor. And then if I scroll to like weeks 9 and 10, the way that we thought about it was by adding in extra opportunities to teach. So maybe now you're co-planning 3 lessons together, and then eventually you're not co-planning anymore. The teacher resident is planning on their own. They're submitting a lesson for feedback, and then they're implementing on their own. So we thought about numbers of lessons per week, types of lessons, and also releasing from doing it with somebody to doing it on my own. I hope that feels concrete enough.
Those are great examples. Thank you. Christian,
Good.
did you? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was thinking, just with saying my morning routines. So what does that mean, right? So engaging with the mentor teacher to reflect on that. Like, what are your morning routines? How do you work? Do you stand at the door and shake hands with your kids as they walk in? Do the kids come inside and is there a routine of how they sit down? So just reflecting on, again, that pausing and reflecting, what is it that I do and why is it that I do these things? And then asking your mentee, well, what do you notice, right? What do you see me doing? And so there's that reflective piece that the mentor has, that the mentee has, in terms of what they're seeing themselves do and what the mentee sees them do. And once those become clear that these are the things that I do in the morning, then it's kind of saying, do you want to try it out? Right. And I think that's the essential of a gradual release, is making those expectations as clear as possible, delineating those, and then giving the opportunity to try those out.
It strikes me that one key relationship we haven't touched on yet today is that of a school leader, of a principal, or maybe a site director, if we're talking about an early childhood program. Can someone sort of talk about how leadership was aware or involved in supporting the learning of the residents and the mentoring program, and how that was sort of integrated into other aspects of school professional learning or structures?
Well, I could speak to that a little bit. The mentor teacher that Mickey had was matched with Mickey because of my relationship with the director of the district, who really believes in what we do, who understands what we do at Bank Street College, who values what we do. And so she knew that Mickey's mentor teacher would be a great match because she held those similar values. And also our partnerships with the international high schools. One of the principals was all for it, and he introduced me to the community, and he wanted us to be there, and he understood what we were trying to do as far as practice. And so he just created very supportive relationships and dialogue between myself and his teachers. And he was able to also communicate clearly to his teachers what kind of program this is, what are the expectations that we have, why, and to clearly explain to them, this is why I want Bank Street student residents to come into our school. And I think that when there is that clarity as to why we're there, that makes a big impact.
And I'll just jump in there quickly. The principals or assistant principals interview folks for the District 13 program. So our Bank Street's typical application process is that an application submitted, that student, if they're hoping to come to my program, they meet with me and I make a decision about acceptance. We have a much different process for the residency program because we're hoping that these residents will get jobs in these District 13 schools. So it's a group interview process with myself, the superintendent, and then a couple of principals from District 13. And that has been really exciting to talk about, what do we see in these candidates and who is our ideal candidate? Let's get on the same page about that. I've loved that part of the program. And then we'll just say that residents go alongside Tammy and her colleagues to professional learnings on Mondays and Tuesdays, and that the professional learning is delivered by a number of people in the district, but residents are expected to be there. So I think those are some examples of principal partnership. It's a growth area for us. It's a place that I would like to just work on strengthening relationship. And with that, one thing that we did different this year is I just got back from an info session at District 13, went 2 different times to meet with principals and just like Christian was saying, talk about the program, make sure that they know what we're all about and that they're excited about it and have the opportunity to ask any questions they might have.
And I have to say that the principals that I work with, they invited our students, our residents for the summer training. They included them in the community. It was really important that for the principal to say, here, you need to be with us from the beginning. And he wrote a beautiful letter to them introducing himself and his high school. So, these partnerships are amazing when they work.
Val, do you want to add a little context here in sort of understanding how Bank Street's advisor role plays into these dynamics?
Sure. Yes, I was thinking that another partner that our mentor teachers and our residents have is the Bank Street faculty member who does the field supervision of the graduate student. So that's another, there's a lot of support around these programs and around these students. And that's a really important piece of the whole experience. All of our graduate students at Bank Street have a faculty advisor. Bank Street's a little unusual in that it's faculty who do that work of field supervision. Many institutions have adjunct faculty do that, but we really have our in-house faculty do that work. And each advisor has about 7 to 9 graduate students that they are observing in the field. And so an advisor would concentrate on students. We have one advisor for students in the District 13 residency program. So folks have Bank Street faculty have an opportunity to get to know the residency program and the residency partners. And then they are in the classrooms observing the teacher resident and often having 3-way conversations between the teacher mentor, the teacher resident, and the Bank Street faculty member. And something I was thinking about as we were talking about the qualities of a good mentor are that just like we aren't born good teachers, we develop into good teachers. We aren't born good mentors, we develop into being good mentors over time. And yes, it's really important that somebody wants to be a mentor, but there's tremendous growth and that a program can foster in terms of a mentor's capacities and skills. And I do see the Bank Street faculty advisor being one piece of that larger puzzle. So when a faculty member is sitting with a graduate student saying, all right, so when you did that literacy activity, what did you notice that kid in the corner doing? And why do you think he was doing that? And what was happening there? They're actually modeling an approach to reflective supervision that for some mentors for whom this role might be new is a useful approach to thinking about how do you use low inference observation with an adult learner to reflect back what you're seeing, to ask somebody to think deeply about their practice, and then to think about what that suggests for areas of growth and development. And the Bank Street faculty member can serve as a kind of support or scaffold to that kind of reflective supervision that, again, we're not born with as mentors. We do need to develop that over time. So that's another piece. I know that's another piece that we have aspirations for strengthening the ways that our faculty advisors work with mentor teachers. Time is always a challenge across any of these kinds of programs. And so, using people's time well is challenging, but we've certainly done some of it. And I think some of that work has been really important and powerful work too.
Thank you. That's such important context. Well, we're nearing the end of our hour, so I wanted to invite each of you to think about one final thought you have about this conversation that you want to share with the folks calling in today. We have a range of different participants, from educators to leaders, and a number of folks who are designing programs like this. So as you think about that audience, what is one, if you could think of one thing you want to make sure folks walk away from today's conversation remembering, what would that be? And Tammy, if it's okay, I'm going to start with you, because I think it's nice to begin this conversation with the perspective of someone who's doing the work right now.
I think one thing that I would say to resident teachers that are applying for this program, or mentor teachers going into mentoring programs, communication is your key. Whether it's, reflective on a lesson communication, or just day-to-day life. Like Mickey said, they got to know each other on a very personal level, and it really makes the experience that much richer. Like, you come away with not just a person that was in your room, but you come away with a friend that can really help you maybe later on, or somebody that you can bounce ideas off of. And I think that communication piece is really important for both parties. So for me, it's all about communication, transparency, and trust. And I think if you have those things, then this program might be for you. Either way, being a resident or being a mentor teacher, it will make you better in your field.
I'd love to hear from some others. One final thought you have that you want to leave folks with. Feel free to just jump in.
I'll jump in. Spend as much time with your potential partners as possible, from leadership all the way down to kids in those classrooms and their families. Who is important to the work? Who is the program serving? Get yourself a group that you can come back to every month or every other month, and just check in with. Are we doing the thing that we set out to do? Those relationships are key. I see a lot of folks from different places. So if you're not familiar with New York, Bank Street, for me, is about an hour commute to some of the closest partnership schools in Tammy's district. And it is worth the commute to get there. It's worth the time spent with people in the district. I have loved this partnership program. It brings me so much joy, and it will take more time than you expect. So where you can err on the side of needing more time to start something like this up, but it is so worth it.
I'd add that, well, here at Bank Street with our TESOL program, we are pushing translanguaging pedagogies, and these are things. This is a theory that plays out in different ways in the field, and we're trying to push innovative ways to work with language learners learning English, and so I think it's important, if you're creating a program that does things differently, creating opportunities to engage in those conversations with administration, with the mentor teachers, and there we spent a significant amount of time just talking about what we do and how we do it and how we approach literacy, and teachers pushing back and saying, that's not possible, we can't do that. Or, so it was a lot of growth for both us as a program to tweak things and say, theoretically this makes sense, but in practice it can't play out in this way, or at least in this context it can't. And so it helps you align your program goals to the field. And if we want our residents to be successful in the field, we have to then adjust our syllabi, our reading, our program accordingly. So ultimately, it's not just in the direction of the school, but also back to us and our program.
Thank you, Christian. All right, Mickey, I'll let you have the last word. We're almost at 5.
Okay, thank you. I think the last thing I want to say is, as I've heard a couple of you mention that, I think it's important to pick people who actually want to be mentors, because not everyone will want to be a mentor. And I think by doing that, actually, what I've experienced is, because I worked with someone who cared so deeply about what she does, it made me care about what I do. And, I really, I want to pass this on, like, I know a lot of teachers who do not like their jobs, so for me, just kind of like passing on the positivity, I think, is really important. So choosing people who actually want to be a mentor is where it starts. Thanks.
Thank you. I want to thank all of our panelists today for joining us and making time for this exciting discussion. I'm incredibly inspired by everything folks have shared, and also want to thank all of you all who are joining us today for tuning in. I'm going to drop our email address in the chat. If you have any questions for anyone on the call, please go ahead and send us a follow-up. We are actively recruiting folks for our different graduate school programs, so happy to field those questions. And also to add anyone who's interested to our mailing list, we have some more publications coming out in the coming months around coaching and mentoring and support for early childhood educators. So with that, thank you so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful afternoon.